Friday, July 11, Further Thought. The dramatic burning bush call was probably the most transformative experience in Moses' life. All other high points in his life depended on his positive, obedient response to God's commissioning him to lead the Hebrews out of Egypt and to the Promised Land. Sure, we know now how it all turned out, but put yourself in Moses' place at the time of the burning bush. He had fled from Egypt to save his life. A new generation of Hebrews had come on the scene over the 40 years, many of whom probably knew little about him, or maybe even when they heard about him was wrong, filtered through stories that over time got distorted. And yet, now he was called by God to lead this same people away from a powerful nation. No wonder he was reluctant at first. Yes, it was an extremely demanding task, but imagine what he would have missed if he had given a final no to God. He might have just disappeared into history instead of, through the power of God working in him, literally making history and becoming one of the greatest and most influential people, not just in the Bible, but in the world itself. And that brings us to our 3 discussion questions for this week. Number 1, in the quiet years spent in the desert, Moses did what God called him to do. He was a family man, took care of sheep, and wrote 2 biblical books under God's inspiration before he was called to be a great leader of God's people. What does Moses' experience teach us about our duties in life? Question 2. One could argue that, on the surface, Moses' excuses were, in and of themselves, pretty reasonable, were they not? Why should the people believe me? Who am I to begin with? I can't speak well. What should this story tell us about how to learn to trust that God can enable us to do what he calls us to do? And question 3. Dwell more on the point made in Sunday study about Moses' authorship of the book of Genesis and how important that work is to understanding sacred history and the plan of salvation. Why must we fight against every attempt, and there are many, to weaken the authority of the book, especially by denying the historicity of, particularly, the first 11 chapters?
For further reading, Moses and Spiritual Gifts, Volume 3, pages 180 to 202, and The Call of Moses, Signs of the Times, February 26, 1880.
A Transformed Mind by Andrew McChesney. Mitch, a tough gang member, got into a brawl with several other Native Americans in the U.S. state of Washington. He suffered a significant head injury, and doctors said he would never work again. Then his younger brother, Stefan, invited him to the All Nations Center Adventist Church in Wapato, Washington. Stefan worshipped every Sabbath at the church with their mother and sister. Mitch didn't want to go, and he went unwillingly to church on Sabbath. But then he went again and again. He immersed himself in the Bible, spurred on by the hope that it could heal his mind. He clung to Romans 12:2, which says, "And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God," in the New King James Version. He embraced Philippians 4:8, which says, "Finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there is any virtue and if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things." Church leader Jeff Wajon encouraged him, saying, "The Word of God promises that it will change your mind if you study it." Mitch began to see Bible promises fulfilled. Doctors who had said he would never work again were surprised to see him get a job and keep it. After Bible studies, Mitch gave his heart to Jesus and joined the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Then He became a Bible worker and started teaching the Bible to others. He and his wife opened their home to young people who needed a place to stay. Anyone was welcome if they followed the house rules. One rule was that everyone went to church on Sabbath. The lives of their house guests also began to change. One young person joyfully told Jeff on Sabbath, "You know what? When you told us about the Bible, we didn't want to listen to you at all, but now we want to study the Bible." Jeff said the change in Mitch's life was revolutionary. When he accepted God into his life, people didn't recognize him anymore, he said. He came from being a person who was very hard and brain damaged to being a person able to minister. Many young people have been touched by him. God works through us despite ourselves. An outreach program to Native Americans in Wapato and the surrounding region of Washington state got its start with the help of a 13th Sabbath offering in 1990. A highlight of the program is the All Nations Center Adventist Church, which opened in 2001.
And remember, God is always faithful.